Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a second submission by Shaelawn and Taz. Taz is a 7-year-old PRE. Now, Karen did the first submission to this horse while I was teaching over in Europe, and I can just say I just looked at that one before I'm looking at this one, and already I'm seeing such a huge improvement in the horse over what we saw in the first video. In the first video, the horse was barely moving in the walk at all and looked very sunken to the back and rather irregular, just even in the walk itself, and was bending over much more in the middle of its neck rather than stretching the neck out. So I see a huge improvement in that, and where you get this sort of to the end of, by the end of this, the horse really gets stretching over its back nicely and really gets out, its neck really out in front of it and long and deep. So you've done a very good job of improving all this work since you sent in the last video. So remember here, we're always looking for that neck to be out as long as we can and not shorten it back into the neck as we ask the horse to step underneath. Not a bad leg yield there. I'd like to step it just a little bit more regular and active, but compared to what I saw in the first video, this horse looked very sticky and had that kind of like it's walking on sticky fly paper or something, or horse paper sticking to its feet. And this is starting to swing so much better than it was in that first video. And once again, the neck is out so much longer, which allows the back to come through. There's the big confusion, that people have today about this whole stretching thing and what it's for. And once again, it's not just to relieve the pressure of the horse's back, which it certainly is. And it certainly, if you didn't have the horse really even over its back, it would be better, to stretch it occasionally as best you can than not stretch it at all. But the point of what we do here when this work is correct, we simply are finding the level of the head and neck that allows the back to engage. And that's going to be different on every single horse that we work with, and developing, and depending on how long the horse has been going hollow, and whether it started developing kissing spine, things like this, So we can't be surprised if a horse is 15 or 16 years old and it's going to take us a couple of years, to bring its body back into shape, and that's just what it's going to take, but it certainly can be done. But the point of the head and neck is how pointless it would be to lower the head and neck, get the horse working over its back, and then just simply pull its head back up in the air and hollow it again. And this is what I'm seeing all the time. There's a bit of confusion about the stretch. I recently just saw, a big time video about the stretch, and the horse was completely hollow all of the time. And this particular horse was even hollow when it was stretching. Its neck was going down. But they were just praising this as being like the end of the world. But the horse was never over its back at all. It was simply, they were letting its neck out some, but they were missing the whole point of what getting horses to stretch over their backs is all about, which is, once again, to find the place that allows the back to come up. So once you have it up, that's the whole point of everything we do. Why would you then bring the head and neck higher until the horse hollowed? And this is what we see people doing who don't understand this work. So as the horse develops, its head and neck will come higher very easily without any resistance whatsoever. It'll be able to carry its head and neck up higher. But once again, if you have a horse that's been, upside down for years and years, some of them have completely forgotten how to move. Unlike this one, is really beginning to relearn how to move. That was really a good leg yield there as you brought the horse across that diagonal. And once again, go back and look at the previous video of this horse, and it was, rather irregular at the walk and noticeably broken in the middle of its neck, and it's just so much longer and more swinging here. So this is a huge improvement of what we saw over what we saw in the first video. So once again, that's all that it's really about, is getting the horse to work over its back and then simply gradually bringing the pole up without shortening the neck back into the body. The other mistake that most people make when they bring the head up, they have this idea that the neck has to be pulled into the body, which they think is collection, but that really has nothing to do with collection, and actually prevents real collection from ever actually happening. So much better walk here. It's got a good rhythm here compared to what we saw once again in that first video. This is so much better. Really starting to swing and get very active. Still has a ways to go. So know that you still have a ways to go here, but by the time you get to the end of this video, this horse is swinging quite nicely in the trot and getting quite deep. So really, once again, a huge improvement over what we saw in the last video. So you're actually right on the right track, and as far as I'm concerned, it looks like everything you're doing is ending up with the correct result. So I have no problem with the way you're riding. Your back is quite straight there. You're letting the horse stretch underneath you. You're not leaning forward, though you did just there a little bit to relieve him a little bit. But once again, you get the point is your leg is pretty much nicely underneath you. Now, always remembering when you use the leg, the whole point of classical work is that we simply never conflict the aids. We never want to ask the horse to go forward and put on the gas at the same time. That's also what has led people to think they're collecting. They think collectioning is pulling a horse together, but that really has nothing to do with it. Real collection is the degree the horse lowers those three joints of the hind legs and thrusts up into a round back, which lifts the forehand off the ground and sort of buoys the front end, off the impulsion of the hind legs. That's what we call thrust. So the horse just lifting its legs up in the air really has no thrust at all, and therefore could not be said to be collected in any sort of form as we should know in dressage. So good shoulder 4 here. Again, the rhythm is improving over what we saw. And notice how he swings a little more when you even let that neck down and out a little bit more. But I love the fact that I'm never really seeing him breaking over like in the middle of the neck the way he was in the previous video. So a huge improvement. Again, as I said, I see you impulsing with your legs, and just remember, after you use your legs, you completely relax them again. So we're not constantly badgering the horse with our legs. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is not getting enough response and then simply, nagging at the horse over and over and over again. But I think you're doing a great job here. Really good stretch into that walk there. I'm not sure exactly what the time frame has been since you sent the first one, but it couldn't have been that long since it came while I was in Europe. So if you've done this much work in a month or so and done this much improvement to this horse, you've really come a long way to getting on the right track. And once you realize this, you just realize how easy it is actually to train horses. Once you actually are letting the horse move in a way that the horse actually can move comfortably, then they become a willing participant. So it doesn't become this big game of fight that trainers so often, make a show of, showing you how good they are at fighting with horses and fighting them into something that they call submission. But really, I don't even like the word submission. I like to think of it more as cooperation. How much is the horse cooperating with you, not how much is the horse submitting to your will. The beauty of this type of work is they become quite into it themselves and actually look forward to the work, and you can tell they're enthusiastic about it. It becomes a fun game for them that they play every day. A little bit sticky in that leg yield there, but not bad. Once again, your corrections were very good. You got the horse to straighten out and stretch even more after the fact, so you've definitely got the right idea. I love how your hands are just going wide and you're keeping the slack out of the reins. That being one of the hardest things for people to learn is that we can keep contact, but without pulling back against the rein. It's just a neutral contact that we gain with the horse's mouth. And that's always the point of the work that we do here when we widen our hands at the first and beginning levels, teaching horses to stretch, because that's really the whole trick to it, is just simply never letting the horse escape that light little contact. And as it starts to go down, that contact becomes even less. And once again, as the horse goes down, it frees its back, and you feel the jaw and relax and the poll relax. The reason we have so many upside down horses today, and horses that are broken over at the third and fourth vertebrae in the neck and their chins pulled to their chest, is that it's simply impossible for a horse to flex at the jaw and poll unless it's over its back. So that's the first thing you have to understand. If your horse is locked up in the jaw, it's not a different bit that's going to solve the problem. It's getting the horse over its back is going to solve the problem. I mean, I've taken horses that you would think, that people, when you took a hold of them, their mouth just felt dead and like you were holding on to a rock. And as soon as you get them to work over their back, that totally goes away. So that was good walk work. I really liked all of that. It shows a huge improvement over what we saw before. I think the way you're applying the aids and you're keeping yourself in a good position, that is most of the time you're up straight. Your leg is underneath you, sometimes letting your shoulders come back. Remember, you can lift up at times if you need to, even a little more, but we never want to ride ahead of the motion. So already this trot is starting to stretch into it. Now he's got a little ways to go, and you get there by the end of this. And it's a way better trot than what we saw just a few weeks ago in your last video. Really good improvement there. Now, one thing I was just curious about is whether or not, because I can't see the horse's feet close enough to see that, but I'm curious if this horse has shoes on or not. The ground there looks pretty hard, as it is here in California. And sometimes horses can be, we find them reluctant to go, or their stride is getting shorter sometimes, that are barefoot. We find that the problem is that they just can't be barefoot. It takes too much, it's too much on the feet in this kind of sandy soil that we have here in California. That's very hard, you know, underneath. When we talk about rings being soft, it's not how soft they are in the top 2 inches. It's how soft they are going into the ground for, 6 feet under you. All good work here. Now you notice he's a little quick here. And what you're going to notice is that when you get him right, he goes at a slower tempo. And that's what we're always looking for, is that speed at which, we have the slowest rate of footfalls with the longest step. That's what I would call the optimal stride on any given horse on any given day. But this has got a pretty good swing to it. It's just a little bit quick and it's a little flat-footed. This horse really hasn't developed any thrust yet, and he could have the action of the hocks could be a little rounder, and it is by the end of this. By the time you get the horse stretching deeper, what we'll see is that as the horse stretches deeper, the tempo becomes slower, and yet we're not really losing a lot of ground coverage. We're actually gaining it, like right in there. Now the horse is starting to swing a little better. You're almost there. And once again, you can see when this horse went by in silhouette, you can see that there's a little bit of a dip behind the saddle there. Just know that all that's going to improve with this work. You're going to see that dip. You see the withers will actually pull up through the shoulders of the horse. And once again, this basic work takes about 2 years to go through to bring a horse to the level of collection. Now that's really not a long time if you think about the training of a horse, and if it's going to last you for years and years, which they certainly can if we train them correctly. So we have to get out of the idea, that horses only last 2 years, which seems to be the prevalent mental state these days about horses and what you're going to do with them. People tend to have like a 2-year career and they're finished. But horses, if you take care of them correctly and take care of their physical and mental needs the way you're doing here by having them in correct work, where they're not stressed every day. And you can see how that slowed down a little bit there. It even gets a little deeper here towards the end. But this is such a huge improvement over what we saw just such a short time ago. Really nice there. See, when it gets there, the hocks start to look a little rounder. Still want that tempo to slow down just a little bit from what it is there. We want to find that place where we just feel like the horse is beginning to feel like it's got springs on. Not a bad canter. Good enough that you can canter this horse and have it be have some value, and the horse stayed over its back quite nicely. So that was good. There, now that's more the trot that I'm looking for there. Right at the end here, you really get some good work. But it was good work all the way along in the sense that you got the horse to where you wanted it and better by the end. And what you're going to find here is you'll start, it won't be long before you'll start where you're finishing here. And that's kind of our goal, where it takes us only 5 or 10 minutes to get to that place. And then that's when you know they're pretty much ready to start coming up in the other direction. A little bit quick here. So I'd like to see you just stretch up a little bit more at times. There you go, as he stretches down, and just get that rhythm a little bit slower. But everything you've done here has been fantastic work. Huge improvement over what we saw in the last video. So keep it up, and I look forward to seeing your next one here at the very end where he starts to get all the way down there. That's what you're looking for. So great job. Keep working that stretch a little bit deeper and a little slower. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. We'll see you next time. Great work.